Mr. Get Off, I get off at my feet, ayy. Once I hit 50k, I'm gonna spit a freestyle. I get the irony in that proclamation, but at least I'm not forcing y'all to bad contracts. I think we can all admit that hip-hop is in a very strange place right now. Even excluding what was one of the biggest events not just in music, but entertainment, pop culture, and news in general, we have seen a spree of cancelled tours, serious allegations. I think something that isn't being discussed enough is the responsibility we as fans and consumers have as fans and consumers. Which is why I remember when trying to create an overarching ethos for the things I'm about to say in this video, I managed to stumble upon this quote. Not even to sit, but to be in the same room as the round table is in can make one's soul valuable. Even if the carpenters of this table have been against you from the very beginning, to etch your name in the carvings of history comes at a greater level of importance than the desire to preserve the legacy you threw away that others depended on you for. While this is something which is not as black and white as it seems, it does help nourish the idea that not only who we see and give our attention to are agents and entities of those of greater corporations and plans and overall conglomerates. For whatever the cause we desire to push forward and be promoted, we selectively choose who is of greater moral and ethical value and who isn't. A harsh reality to accept, which is the exact reason as to why I made that quote up. So this is the sequel to my prior video of how black people sought out hip hop, so in retaliation it extorted us. If you haven't watched that video yet, I'd strongly recommend it, as it will assist you in better understanding this video, as it does better contextualize what I'm about to say right now, which is this. Hip-hop was born with good intentions in a world where none exist, and it inevitably conformed to the standards of that world, to where what built it would soon become the materials for future anomalies as opposed to being what was once the status quo. The new status quo takes form in three major elements, I believe. Greed, hypocrisy, and destruction. Each one of these elements have micro-elements that make them, naturally, but there's one thing that towers over them all: control. Control! And when it comes down to business, like anything, I would say hip-hop is largely about control. Who we prefer versus who we rally against. Who we will push versus who we will discard. The narratives and stories that will be constructed in order to maintain such a high level of control. Control of the culture and perception. Kinda like how certain religions were birthed and conditionally set in their roots of control and power, capital and status, but justifies it with the promises of saying you'll kick it with the floating men in the sky, or you'll end up down below as a kick streamer. But let's not get into that today. My ambitions are to guide you through a perspective, a narrative almost, as to how this phenomenal genre is akin to a snake eating itself. So, get comfy, because this is finna be a long one. Action.
They gotta be open to 10 for you and your friends. You know how I spend in HOUSTON. I get too crazy, got a little bad, you know, we stay good.
Greed, like any business in any setting, corporate or not, is almost like an intrinsic function in order to scale that business to new heights. But in music, it's cracked up to a whole nother level. With falsified promises of longevity and success for artists that's strictly dependent on what they can do for the label, any type of security isn't guaranteed by a vast majority of artists. With many artists openly expressing their multiple dismays with their labels and executives, to the latter, it often falls upon deaf ears as it continues to happen. But when it comes down to hip-hop, it moves in manners which hardly gives out more than it receives. The most puzzling thing about this aspect of hip-hop is that despite the many protests and hopes that a change in the industry would come, people, when they learn how to play the game, would much rather benefit from its offerings as opposed to seeing it crash and burn. What I find intriguing is how the modes of greed takes pages out of the handbooks from groups and entities that haven't always been so favorable of African American culture, such as the Italian Mafia, for example. Specifically the Black Hand operations, with it being made a lot more prominent in the early 1900s in cities such as New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Detroit, just to name a few. The Black Hand served as a type of extortion practice where the Italian Mafia would execute tactics of shakedowns and threats in order to seize control and power of businesses, politicians, and have a controlling interest in whatever region and territory they would claim. This type of practice would find its way into African American culture because what I'm referring to exactly is the idea of checking in. While this isn't a discussion about the pros and cons about checking in, it doesn't take a genius to know that this is more of a self-serving practice more than it is a community and ethical one. While checking in isn't something that is exclusive in hip-hop, it's definitely a powerful way to extort money and leverage deals and opportunities from artists and celebrities alike regardless of status. For those of you who are unaware with what I'm talking about, no, I'm not talking about going out to an airport. Checking in is when, in this case, an artist is going out to a state to conduct business on those grounds. If you are gang affiliated, then it's strongly advised that you leave that within the native residency you're in. By checking in, you're able to be entitled to certain facilities, venues, opportunities, and connections you may not have been otherwise been able to gain access to. You will also be known throughout the area you will be occupying so that other gang affiliated natives will not run up on you. If I'm making it sound like some type of government or diplomatic community type of function, that's because it's kind of similar to that. While you could make the argument that if you are going to be conducting business in a state or area in which you're not from and therefore you should pay your just dues to the community and the region you're currently occupying, it's a measure to ensure you can leave the state the same way you came in, alive. Rappers like Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, and Beanie Sigel are just a few people who have talked about the necessity about checking in. Basic induction skills should be able to rationalize how extortionate practices of checking in promotes a very capitalistic notion. You will be found within the proximity of a certain space at the cost of a fee, or if you're able to have one of our up-and-coming artists hop on a feature with you. Case in point. It's not unknown about Suge Knight's notorious reputation in making artists pay a fee for protection from himself. Let's really keep it a buck. The infamous story of him and his people shaking down Vanilla Ice at a few public places unannounced and uninvited, which would lead him to essentially pushing him to have Vanilla Ice sign over the rights to have Ice Ice Baby to Mario Lavelle Johnson. I butchered that, I'm saying it again. To Mario Lavelle Johnson, who was an acquaintance of Suge Knight, with the points being around $3 to $4 million. While the infamous rumor of him being dangled over the balcony has been refuted, knowing where Suge Knight is from, LA can be seen as the central capital of extortion practices in the hip-hop industry, or any creative industry for that matter. In the previous video, I mentioned how these record labels, executives, and producers will bank on the ignorance of these artists. Understanding many of their backgrounds, they don't expect them to be educated enough to understand what they're dealing with, or give the words above the dotted line enough attention. LaRussell, a Californian artist, was an artist who was noticed by Roc Nation and was offered to come onto the label as a new artist. Unfortunately for Roc Nation, LaRussell has not only a brain, but eyes, as he saw that the contract they gave him only offered him $15,000 as a discretionary fund despite having financial benefits and participation from whatever LaRussell would be making.
The original offer that came before the actual offer was a bad offer.
Right.
And the parameters around it just felt funny to me at the time. You know, it was like there was no money in the original contract. It was like, oh, it's a mistake, right? And he made a call and they sent in a new one. Like, it was immediate and it had money attached to it.
So you telling me that the original deal had $0 and they participated?
A $15K discretionary fund, but
right,
no
but
money.
that's zero. That's nothing, right, in the grand scheme of things. But I'm saying, and they had participation in the they had financial participation in the benefits of the music.
Right. It just didn't sit right with me to where I could do it, because it felt like, I don't know, that's a lot of money to make a mistake with. And even if it was a mistake, it made me start thinking, like, if I would have signed the one with no money, would you have told me it was a mistake?
No.
And once I started feeling like that, it was hard to, like, it's really hard to do business after that. And it didn't, you know, like I said, it didn't come with no explanation. Even after, like, I did the interview with Math and we was talking about it and it went viral, it didn't come with, like, a call of, like, no, bro, this is what happened. You know, like I just feel like a genuine would give you a call if they was ever trying to sign you to they and how you be a part of what they doing, but it didn't come with a call.
Not only do I agree with LaRussell here, but I don't subscribe to giving people like Jay-Z a pass under circumstances like these, especially given his constant vocalization about such things in his music and overall interviews whenever he did that. Although Roc Nation is a massive media agency and he pays people to handle and deal with such things, you don't make a $750,000 mistake. My nigga, a mistake is giving someone $2 instead of $3 back in change. $750,000 isn't a mistake. That's a choice, dog. A choice you should not be making at any stage when it comes to handling any up-and-coming artists, especially at the beginning stages of their career. We would see the same thing happen with TLC, where they were the biggest female group in the world and yet still filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy because they only made 56 cents per album sold, which they would have to split between the 3 members. Cost of expenses relevant to touring and production were deducted from their earnings, which affected their take-home money, as this was a result of a bad deal they signed into. Another case is when Chuck D, the frontman of Public Enemy, actually sued Universal Music Group for over $100 million in royalties in 2011. This is because before the age of digital downloads, UMG bought the rights to Public Enemy's first 5 albums back in 1998 when they bought Def Jam. Chuck D went on to say they owed their artists and producers hundreds of millions of dollars from the sales they made from downloads and ringtones. Naturally, you would think that transitioning into the age where purchasing physical copies was starting to fade into the past, they would compensate the artists adequately through these digital downloads and sales. However, the contract Public Enemy was under, as a legacy act, the contract did not have any explicit terms for the compensation for digital royalties, saying that UMG paid around $80 in royalties for every 1,000 songs downloaded, and just under $50 for ringtones. However, he proclaimed these should not be perceived as unit sales, but as licenses, so these figures should have increased heavily, especially on the streaming front. Y'all see a trend here, right? The issue is never an issue unless you make it an issue. Otherwise, these businesses will keep on extorting the money out of your back pocket. The loopholes in these legalities are a surefire way to make sure you, as your agents, do not see your real profit for your work. Hip-hop is the perfect cash cow for this. Knowing that in 2022 it had generated over $15 billion in music streams and purchases alone, and its ever-growing influence, it's able to generate 2 things: money and the influence to generate more money. When you see artists like Sexy Red, Ice Spice, Glorilla, and I say these women in particular because since 2021 to 2022, there haven't been that many new hip-hop artists that have emerged from those years that have generated as much early success as them, and they rank among the few artists who have caught the heat. There's a lot of opportunity in capitalizing on the artists who better promote the image of degeneracy as opposed to artistic quality and the merit, because the former is easy to create controversy over, which inevitably leads to more exposure, and within this publicity, an artist will grow. Now, I think with his recent OVO takes and how much of a cornball he has developed into, Maul is someone whose opinion I don't take with much consideration, but he had a point down here when discussing the talent pool regarding the recent BET Awards.
But we could do without the BET Awards for a few years. Talent pool kind of like catch up a little bit and let these artists develop, and then we can come back in maybe 3 years and see what we got. Like, but this shit, to do this every year, and this is the shit we putting forth. Like Glorilla and all them, we love them. We love Sexy Red, but we don't need to see them performing. But when we talking about putting this type of talent on a stage like the BET Awards, I'm just thinking that there's a certain level of talent that we're reserving for that.
Especially given previous BET Awards of yesteryears, this was a true far cry from what these awards used to represent and the artists they would present. What these awards truly meant for black music. But given the climate of entertainment and attention we are constantly subjected to nowadays, what can you really expect? However, because this is both what the industry pushes out and advocates for because of the attention and profit it will generate, and how the consumers, that being you guys, consistently support and give into, this will be the reality for black music for the foreseeable future, with little to no signs of changing because there is no money when it comes down to creating music people like Vince Staples or Rhapsody creates that would garner more commercial and global success. I want to clarify that I'm not calling Vince or Rhapsody nobodies or bad in any light, because they are among the 2 artists I really enjoy listening to, and y'all need to listen to their new projects. The necessity to capitalize on the trends of the current age of hip-hop, as well as to further push these completely fake and fraudulent lifestyles, both work together synonymously when it comes down to pushing the agenda of a meritocratic type of function, which some would look at as a very schismatic statement to make. As in my previous video, I noted that the old battlegrounds of hip-hop was built upon the individual's goal to be the best artist, but that purpose was designed to be served within the sport itself and not outside it. The current culture, as we know, has long abandoned the desire and philosophy and ventures of materialistic bragging. And when I say materialistic bragging, I'm not just talking about how much money rapper A has over rapper B or the consumers. I'm talking about the dogma of materialism as a whole and its function in capitalist society, which hip-hop has been subdued and plagued into. What I mean is that the service potential and value we see in rappers like Lil Baby and Ice Spice are to be measured against each other in the function of how they serve us, the consumers, and then how they serve the investors, the labels, and executives.
I'm not sated. Feed me more.
In this fashion, the method and models in which their artistic potential is displayed takes a second seat to how much profit their artistic potential can lead to profit. Having Ice Spice open up or headline a show with "You think you the shit" serves greater value and outreach simply because the competitors within that same space, their product is of less value when compared. In other words, regardless of the work put in and the work put out, the promotion of whatever lifestyle, philosophy, and substance, the more, in this case, Ice Spice music gets played, attracts advertisers, promoters, event marketers, and other capital entities, the stronger the value of the product she produces becomes. For a more simplified demonstration, these three women are conventionally attractive. These three women are also young. These three women are also good at shaking ass. Men love beautiful women who shake their ass. Now, it doesn't really matter who shakes their ass the best and makes the music about shaking their ass the best. The one that will reach greater publicity will be the one that will be the face of ass shaking for the next 3 or 4 years whilst rapping it. Can you guess which one will prevail over the others? I'll give you 5 seconds. All of them. They all will. Because that's part of the plan. If you think I'm objectifying women or providing a harsh critique, I'm not. I'm merely reporting on what's being observed. I can't do what an industry is already promoting and what clearly the majority already like despite the ethical and cultural implications of it, but I will get into that more with chapter 2. I also want to say that this song is about having side men, side women, side pieces in general, and further promoting disloyal polygamy. But it's y'all same women talking about how all niggas are cheaters and scumbags, but this what y'all want to listen to. Hey, look, man. Alright, whatever. The industry doesn't care about copycats the same way fans do. The industry doesn't consider the opinions of fans. They consider the opinions of consumers and the investors. Knowing the difference between the two is knowing the difference between why they're able to make so much money. Of course, not all women also dominate this space fall into this category, but they are outliers. So the BET Awards also participates in this degenerative conduct of promoting cash grabs and attention, but in the most embarrassing thing about that is that they've become so out of touch with their audience and fully focused on the trend of the culture, they fail to realize that the majority of the attendees are not the target audience for who these people are and who they make the music for. So them standing around barely sidestepping isn't being a too cool for school act, it's what am I looking at? That being said, I'm not saying the music mentioned is objectively bad because there's no such thing, but it's not exactly good either. I mean, I say that, but then again, you know, Glorilla's yeah glow, I mean, you know, she be sliding on that one. Also, has anyone else noticed BET's downscale their venue like tremendously? When did it go from this to this? The necessity to get a return on your investment is far more important than ensuring the product you're investing into is one of credible worth. There is no level of stopping these questionable actions, such as when Republic Records dropped Pop Smoke's posthumous album Faith a year after his death. Now, I'm very indifferent on posthumous albums depending on how you go about making them, but Faith was a complete corporate greed and commercializing the death of a black man. The campaign and promotional run in the lead up to the release of this record was littered with sentimental and memorial marketing to tug at the emotional heartstrings of Pop Smoke fans, many who did not effectively have the respectful time to grieve the death of Pop Smoke, given the horror story that was 2020 and all that entailed. So when things were initiating its cooldown phase, Republic Records goes, Oi, Antoine, oh, you're right, mate. Hey, who's that fucking bloke that died last year? Pop Smoke! Ooh, I nearly socked you in your motherfucking jaw, dog. No, it's Pop Smoke. And why you talking about it, man? Oi, what if we take the music that he didn't release yet, put it into an album, get people like Dua Lipa and some other street thugs onto the album, yeah, push it out, make money from it, then, on his birthday, drop a deluxe album. We get more streams from it, get more revenue, keep more relevant. What do you say? No. Oh, well, I've already done it. What? Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't think you was gonna like it anyway because I'm not racist, but
you're black, he's black. I thought this would be like a bit too far out of your comfort zone, so I did do it in the background. But don't worry, I got 50p on it. Who? 50p? It's 50 Cent, boy! In a review blog by Anthony Malone on Hip Hop DX, he detailed how the album was nothing more than an uninspired and lazy compilation project of disjointed features that were incongruous with Pop's vocals and overall felt like an unfinished and rushed project. A sentiment I can agree with, because it all felt like a variety of artists on a project that didn't blend well with each other. Busy Banks and Dua Lipa on the same album with two different tones alone was just horrendous. As Malone would say, Faith has nothing to offer fans and new listeners alike. This isn't a Pop Smoke album, it's a symbol of greed curated for the streaming era. Pop gets lost in the chaos between the glossy production and overabundance of mediocre guest features. While it received mixed reviews, other media outlets would corroborate this similar perspective of looking at this album as nothing more than a cash grab to further enhance streaming numbers, and adding his pre-existing hits like Dior is a greater testament to how they robbed Pop Smoke from the grave just to have him on the feature of his own project. And lastly, in the relevance of Pop Smoke, Adam 22 is a different type of clown for having one of the people who ran up on Pop in LA, which led to his death. He is not the person who should be qualified to have these type of individuals on the air to talk about such events and then hide in the defense of bringing awareness to a cultural tragedy. Especially given how the person, Blockstar, expressed no regret at all, irrespective of his age at 19 to 20, the last person he should be talking to is Adam 22. So, between bad contracts, greater platforming of certain artists who have a more impressionable audience that will invest into the system that feeds into the provision of the industry, and labels that will further use any means necessary, even post the death of a recent deceased artist to further push the streams and increase their revenue, we can easily identify that there is no moral line which these people would not stoop to. But let's keep it a buck now. When you point one finger at someone, you're pointing three back at yourself, which perfectly transitions into the other element which fuels this mechanism of hip-hop, and that element being it's very difficult to be a fan of something in its totality whilst having to accept certain aspects and or subjects of that particular thing that advocate for something against your morals or beliefs, which is why the argument of detaching the art from the artist serves as the ultimate crutch, knowing that the very artist you revere in such high regard is, behind the music, a piece of shit, a liar, or just a money-hungry scummy as the next person, and can really sully the enjoyment factor when it comes down to taking in their music. And then, as the listener, you too listen to the music that conflicts with your own beliefs. A little something we like to call you hate gang violence and excessive use of vulgarity, but will listen to drill music. You hate the objectification of women and how men reduce their body parts, but can memorize Nicki and Cardi songs easier than you being able to remember what day Father's Day is. This isn't to say that liking Cardi or Drew is inherently a bad thing, but the level of awareness some people will lack only to criticize what they see and the ever-increasing output of it is what leads to a couple head scratches. And because I'm a firm believer of working smarter and not harder, I'm going to use a very recent event to discuss how this hypocrisy works both as an artist, as a consumer, and how this component, once again, further fuels the negative outlook hip-hop has on mass scale.
Life. It's survival, survival.
This is a great excuse to both tie in how this battle further perpetrated this idea of hypocrisy as a fan and as the artist involved, as well as the artists around them, and then tie in the surrounding story of this battle in particular. Now, it's not enough for you to be living under a rock, but if you somehow, some way, stopped existing between the months of March to June, there is no way you would have not have heard at least a whisper about the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. Because no word of a lie, the week Kendrick dropped off of his diss track and Drake dropped Family Matters, that week alone on Everything I Love, this is all people were talking about. From news anchors to commentary channels that have no business talking about it, anime dogs, and even professors. Everyone has something to say about it. Even those that had no reason to talk about it and shouldn't have talked about it.
Future and Metro's booming track.
What?
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It was the first time in a hot minute where you could go on Twitter in public and not see some big old biddies on the rando slide. But for those that either didn't hear about it or simply didn't care, I'll give you the very brief rundown. Disclaimer, this is not a full-on dedicated breakdown on the entire timeline between this beef of Drake and Kendrick, nor is it a deep insight into the mechanisms of its internal structure. It serves as a catalyst to serve a grander point. By the time this video is out, I'm sure FD dropped that 3-hour video on it, so go check that out or other videos that provide a far more complex detailing of the beef. You see, what really sparked the match with this beef was back in 2013 on Big Sean's The Control verse from Kendrick really put things into motion. Calling out a list of rappers in a very competitive fashion, he would look to cement his place on the top of the throne, both in the East and the West. This would also ruffle the feathers of a certain nasty and despicable freakazoid, but that's a different conversation. While the rappers included in the verse acknowledged the competition and would soon later dismiss it, Drake was the only one who would openly feel some type of way about it, stating you cannot proclaim such assertions and then walk around and be cool with the same people you threw shots at.
Giving people like moments, you know, like that verse was a moment to talk about. Are you listening to it now at this point in time? If I asked you, for example, like, how does that verse start?
Kendrick are good as far as like the albums and doing records with each other. Did that kind of, when you heard your name, did you feel like, man, like that was kind of disrespectful? Or did you feel like, you know, our names were just kind of thrown in there and it was?
I feel like he made a decision, you know what I'm saying? And there was a decision to make, you know? He was like, man, I'm either going to go for this moment because I know it's going to be a big moment, or I'm going to like take heed to the fact that I have real relationships and I'm going to like not do that.
Does it make you like not want to collab with him?
Yeah, I'm good right now, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just about this album and me, and, you know, I don't know necessarily if I feel like 100%, like, I'm not like, man, send me some, let's work. Like, nah, not really. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm really just focused on me and OVO and my side of things. You know, I'm not really like into doing like a record with him. No, I don't know who's gonna go back from that and be like, yeah, let's do like, let's link up and nah, you know what I'm saying? But he'll be all right. You know, he's a talented dude.
To this day, I don't understand why Drake felt so sensitive about it, because that's what everyone does all the time, himself included, except in this case, names were explicitly thrown out, but I digress. This would later reach a turning point when Kendrick would drop one of the coldest cypher verses in BET history and would let it stack with more shots being thrown at Drake. And Papoose as well, but I mean, who cares about Papoose? Seriously? The next 10 years would be a series of shots being thrown at each other through various songs, explicit and implicit, but the two never really clashing head to head, leaving it up to the fans to discern the feud up until March of this year when Kendrick straight up says, "Motherfuck the big three, nigga, it's just big me," and that set the match alight. The battle was on. Drake, in both response to Kendrick and various other artists, would then release the first official track of the battle with Push-Ups, where Drake would take what I would call the Jay-Z approach, where he's waving his gun at a whole bunch of people, including Kendrick, Rick Ross, The Weeknd, Metro Boomin, John Moran, Future, and just everyone else in the music industry who has betrayed him. Which, I mean, I get it. This is when fans began to project their very weird and honestly corny takes and started doing a countdown for how long time it's going to take until Kendrick responded and overall began making these narratives about Kendrick's ability to perform. Now, while a version of Push-Ups was leaked on the 13th of April, the official release of Push-Ups dropped on the 19th of April, which would be the same day Drake would then release another track called Tailor-Made Freestyle, which is where our first notch of hypocrisy came from. You know, we are living in the genesis of AI, and it sparked the universal debate about how the use of AI is when it comes down to music. Drake using AI to imitate Tupac and Snoop to rap verses against Kendrick received far more negative backlash as opposed to being seen in a much more comedic and innovative light. The subject of ethical lines being crossed began to surface once again, and the question began to run around whether or not Drake was in truth disgracing the legacy of not only battle rap culture, but the culture in general by even executing such an action. Drake, being someone who is yearning for the respect of others, would want to be seen in the same light as the other credible and respected artists. What does this say both for him and his reputation? Well, obviously it didn't amount to much, since Tupac's estate had Drake pulled a song down from the internet as it was in violation of Tupac's personality rights, as well as the fact that it was a distasteful venture against Kendrick of all people, which, I mean, what's the point? Either way, it notes that someone who denies criticism of being a culture vulture would use West Coast legends like a summoning jutsu. 11 days after this, on the 30th of April, Kendrick would drop Euphoria, detailing his vehement disdain towards Drake's conduction of how he actively takes leisures, articulates himself, and assaults his gums. How he's a bad father, how his abs are fake, and the strangeness about how he wanted Kendrick to jump on first-person shooter despite their history, how he drifts from person to collect style points, but unfortunately, Yachty can't give him no swag neither, and overall, just calling Drake a lame. Oh, and Drake can't say the word nigga no more. The road up to Euphoria, everyone was calling Drake scared and pussy and doing more of those hiding the hand that casted the stone movements, but as Rhapsody best put,
everybody like, he got 3 weeks. I was like, he in there cooking over and over and over again.
What was wrong with them, Rhapsody?
I don't know.
What was wrong?
The boy has been performing at this level a long time. What did you... I was like, Takeover came out September 11th. Nas responded 2-3 months late on his birthday.
Yeah, December.
What are we talking about, clock? Like,
again, like...
The boy don't be on social media, and he don't care about that. He cut from the cloth. Ain't no rules. When I come out, I'ma come out. That's all you need to know about. And be ready. He wasn't ready.
They don't get it.
I don't know what we talking about here.
Shortly after this, Kendrick dropped arguably the second best diss track from the beef and the most slept on 616 in LA, which was led with and complex to the T. Look, Drake asked for quadtundras and Kendrick delivered. Man, Dog said, I live in circadian rhythms of a shooting star, the mannerisms of Raphael, I can heal and give you art. And you thought you had the confidence in thinking you could win against Cuz? Boy, what is wrong with you? This track specifically would discuss how the people in OVO camp aren't as genuine as Drake would like to believe, and how there are those who are just as Judas-like in their movements as Drake would say about other people. And those would be the people that I would want to explode him the most. It was after this track I knew Drake had lost, and it was an unwinnable battle from that point on. Then, on the 3rd of May, Drake would drop the banger in Family Matters. Yes, Family Matters was hard. No, OVO is not paying me to say that. Y'all just let favoritism blind you. While this felt like the extended version of Push-Ups, he would double down on his dislikes towards the aforementioned artist and push the heavy allegations that one of Kendrick's hits on his, but they freeze, and that Kendrick was abusing Whitney, the mother of his children. It was a 7-minute track that really danced with Devil by Immortal Technique. On the Kingdom, I cannot run that song back. I actually refuse. Kendrick would take this approach as if he was writing a letter to Drake, his parents, Drake's supposed daughter who, let's call it a spade, doesn't actually exist. Kendrick fell for that. And Drake's son Adonis. The biggest takeaway from this record is that Drake harbors knowledge of an alleged ring of certain traffic. This would then do a lot of damage to Drake's image, and it was honestly the nail in the coffin. Then Kendrick would spin the block to piss on his grave with Not Like Us, which that doesn't need further elaboration given its global reach and what it's done to Drake with how it's turned something into an anthem. Drake would clap back with the Hot Pot 6, but anyway, as I said, that was a very brief overview of the sequence of events, as this is still about the hypocrisy that exists in the abstract. So, how does this beef display hypocrisy in hip-hop? Now, before I continue, I want to first say Kendrick is in my top 10. Drake didn't stand a chance against him in a battle, and I knew this from the longest of time, years before this beef. But I'm speaking as an impartial analyst and not a fan, so inevitably I'm going to say a lot of stuff that y'all will not like and may likely get angry at because the division of Kendrick you have is the golden figure of hip-hop, when that's not exactly the case because both Kendrick and Drake are both scumbags. Why are they both scumbags? Because they're not only victims of a culture that breeds the degeneracy they both claim they don't promote, but they're both pots calling the kettle black. Starting with Kendrick, despite what he said in Savior and the overall theme of his discography, especially in the likes of Butterfly and Mr. Morale, depicting his humanity being no different from someone else, knowing he is a victim to fame, infidelity, and suppressing his own trauma, he, on multiple occasions, talks from a pedestal fit for a god. This messiah complex that he has is one which, amongst his fans, has granted him immunity from criticism. For example, in the song Mother I Sober, the same song Drake misunderstood, Drake raps from one of his most vulnerable and fragile positions that we've ever seen, where he talks about a past of abuse, addiction, and generational trauma. However, the last few bars can cause something problematic. Something that was similar to the Hot Pot 5, where he forgives the abusers of the victims with the desire to break the cycle of hatred and how hurt people. As he says, as I set free all you abusers, this is transformation. This reformation should not come from the blessing of Kendrick, a rapper of all people, who has open association to the likes of someone like Kodak Black, who has very weird cases. As much as an emotionally moving song it was, Kendrick in his Moses cosplay talking about "I set free all you abusers" is one of the most tone-deaf and arrogant approaches to reformation, and can be seen as stripping away the victim's choice on the matter. Irrespective of the past an abuser has or the circumstances in which they conducted such a heinous actions, it is not up to Kendrick to proclaim such things, even if his intentions are pure both in artistic and a moral sense. That is the same thing he said when he rapped from Nipsey's perspective in The Hot Pot 5, when he said, "And to declare that sped of my demise, I forgive you, there's no your souls in question. I seen your pain and your people when the trigger got squeezed, and though you did me gruesome, so I was truly relieved. I completed my mission, was ready to leave, but fulfilled my days, my creator was pleased." Just because Lauren London may have co-signed that doesn't free it from criticism. While many would criticize Drake's use of AI in tailor-made freestyle, but would seemingly take a blind side to Kendrick's use of deepfake personas, their response is that the manner as to how they used it was different and should not be perceived in the same light. Therefore, that statement should hold true if one were to perceive this in a light which speaks for Nipsey, peace be upon him, to forgive his killer, claiming that he had completed his mission and fulfilled his days. That's like if I died tomorrow, knock on wood, and one of you guys said, "Yeah, Riddick was barely getting started, but he completed his mission, and to the guy that stabbed him 100 times, he forgives you, but no, your soul's in question." Look, dog, I ain't forgiving shit. And the second I see you down here, all you finna hear is this over and over and over again. Kendrick being the agent of a moral adjudicator is one which does substantiate a lot of Drake's shots at him as he projects his mightier than thou persona, but just because Kendrick acknowledges and perceives himself not to be, that doesn't mean his actions do not conflict with what he projects. This isn't to say Kendrick is not a genuine person in who he is or the content and what he raps about, but we have to call a spade and acknowledge the fact that the path and desire to be present a case of pushing for good morals and a community. Having Dr. Dre, who has been accused of having violent domestic abuse cases on his previous partner Nicole Young, his ex-girlfriend Michelle and D. Bonds, known instances that everyone has known for years, but when you're as real as the company you keep in an industry fueled by the patriarchal structure chauvinism, which has a disproportionate amount of support against women, the cases of people like Dre, J, M, R. Kelly, as consumers and fans, we have acknowledged something very bizarre, as it is unfortunate. They can get away with it because they are men and because they're rich.
Ugh, men.
But two things can be true at once. As while they have a past which many blatantly ignore or chalk up to a past they are no longer a part of, they have contributed heavily to the culture of hip-hop and black culture in general. A culture which continues to inspire future generations and current generations of creatives today. So naturally, especially coming from a class of people who, at the time, had no representation at all, if these were to be the people who would lead our creative spaces forward, the cheers of our support would have to be louder than our cries of dismay, especially when it concerns the women and their safety. Knowing this, Kendrick would still refer to black women as queens and the importance of how they must be protected despite recognizing the greatness of the aforementioned on multiple occasions. Does this make Kendrick a bad person by association if he himself does not partake in such things? That's a question only you can answer, but we can only shed light onto it. But awareness doesn't automatically equal a desire to acknowledge rationale, as there has to come a moment where the defense of "it only happened at a time where it was normalized" is becoming less and less as a safety measure for the reputation for these individuals. I would like to think that as long as the public image of an artist is represented in a stronger fashion, that the skeletons in their closet, along with how strong their legal and PR team is, their reputation can be salvageable or saved. Kendrick's distance from social media and the public in general grants him this very talisman. Something Drake does not have, and where he is far more vulnerable to such attacks in comparison. Drake calling Kendrick an abuser doesn't hold the same weight it does compared to Kendrick calling Drake a PDF file, because the former is not as documented as much as the latter is. The video of him kissing the 17-year-old on the cheek and making remarks about her breast, his relationship with Millie Bobby Brown, Bella Harris, Madison Bear, Halle Baldwin, Billie Eilish, and, just to name a few. And while I'm not calling Drake a PDF file or groomer, there's just more evidence in favor of the case that he is, as opposed to that not being true at all. But, as he would say, he's too rich to be arrested. Still can't believe you said that dumbass shit. However, like it or not, despite what many would say Drake is in terms of the culture vulture tendencies and ways, in a very large sense, he does represent the hip-hop culture's slimy predispositions. Predator culture does not exist just in the capital hip-hop brings, but it also exists in the moral, social aspect of it as well. Since we know women are a major selling point and theme for a lot of rappers, Drake being one of the biggest ones. So he can laugh at Kendrick being a fake activist all he wants, but you are an actual adult making heartbroken songs at your big ass age. Despite this, the very women he makes money from by using their stories for his discography, he would also use Whitney, Kendrick's fiance, as a means to weaponize her against him. Something that the public didn't know in large, but now has the sanctity of her privacy invaded because winning in a battle is far more important to Drake than keeping the family close. But when it's wartime, this is what you gotta do, without condoning or condemning, I understand. But it's within these moments we see what we're willing to accept and embrace when caught up in the moment of it all. In these moments of excitement and hype, logic and rationale fly out the window. When Kendrick brought out Dre in the Juneteenth show, for a moment, we forget about what kind of past Dre has. But soon after, we start to look at these fallibilities. For example, Drake going at Kendrick's lack of authenticity as a black artist when he's done collaborations with the likes of Taylor Swift and Maroon 5. I never saw this as a diss, however, especially how Drake has never once owned his black heritage outside of when he's a profit from it. Although he is not the type of artist to make the type of music that would lean into the subject matter Kendrick resides in, to attack such an angle, question his activism without being nearly as active in those spaces, all while just having a collab with Camila Cabello, and cuz talking about some Wagwan Delilah. I ain't got a good Canadian accent. Like, that part blacker than you at this point, dog. And once again, it falls under the same breath as when Drake shouts out support for Tory Lanez despite him shooting Meg Thee Stallion in the foot, and would then shout out Chris Brown despite knowing what transpired between him and Rihanna all those years ago, only to accuse Kendrick of the very things not only Chris Brown has done, but the people in his circle are alleged to be doing, as well as in regards to that whole operation Kendrick mentioned in Meet the Grams. So when this picture from either one of these two is painted, it's less about who is closer to the truth and whose bars hit harder, but more about whose bullshit stinks less than the other, which is why the consensus resulted with Kendrick being the winner. What the beef highlighted was simply an instance where what matters more isn't about the culture that's being damaged when you look back at the flames and the battleground they fought on, but the preference and the principles of who you prefer more as an individual and those same principles that you stand on. Knowing hip-hop to be a space where many acknowledge that respect for the culture, its foundations, and the honors that come with it carrying greater accolades and mainstream appeal, and the numbers will always favor someone like Kendrick, and then be quick to throw Drake under the bus despite the work Drake has done for hip-hop over the gladiator of years he has. I'm not saying you have to like him or even respect him, and anything you want to say about Drake in particular is potentially valid, but those same criticisms turn into whispers when it's about someone you like or favor more. The same way people will overly complain about the lack of thematic diversity in hip-hop, but will not platform the arts that will promote a much more morally robust form of an artistic substance. Like, Big Sean is looking to drop sometime soon, and I'm sure you can't just look at Kendrick to be hip-hop's savior whilst degrading everyone else, as great as he is. While the Juneteenth show was a monumental event for the city of Los Angeles, Kendrick given other lesser-known rappers that spot on the grand stage, I'm able to understand the backlash from those that wonder what Kendrick does for rappers and hip-hop in general, except for disappearing every few years. I can understand not having your favorite artists provide a consistent level of outputting their content. Cause you know, all this damn talk about slam dunk, nigga, what the fuck is Vagabond in no way? But that's when we look at things purely from a point of consumerism, a perspective where we strip away the rights of an individual just so they can saturate the market to satisfy our lust for their product. I'm sounding like a fiend right now. Which, funny enough, ties back to the capital greed, which has its hands deeply rooted in the body of hip-hop. And once these roots are there, it begins to rot the soil, the very core and the body and the essence of the sport. Which just so happens to be the perfect segue that leads us into... Now, we all know hip-hop is a complex, multifaceted, diverse genre of music which doesn't reject anybody, even when it sometimes should. But the common denominator is that no one enters the game with the intention to destroy it. Even so, the music that prevails in greater capacity is a far cry from what it used to be in the norm several decades ago, which is to be expected, as I always say that if things cannot change, they will fail to evolve, and a complete removal of any type of objective framework in art will render said art to remain in something that akin to a catatonic state, which is why, in the case of destruction, we need to understand what I mean by destruction specifically, because it stretches out into multiple forms and multiple different realms. There's destruction of culture and art, I suppose, if you want to really condense it, both of which kind of intertwine with each other. So when I say culture, I'm largely talking about black Western culture, as that's the market that heavily dominates hip-hop. Hell, black alone is becoming a very vague and low-key unnecessarily argumentative term nowadays. In the prior video, I talked about how hip-hop has reached a point where anyone and everyone can enter, how the gates have been torn down, and how there are no gatekeepers. This means it is easy to be infiltrated by people who have no respect for the culture of hip-hop and largely see their black culture as a means to capitalize on the greater desire to be entertained as opposed to be inspired. You see, whilst I was editing this video, I happened to come across this news article about how an Oakland rapper named Tan the God was unalived at a grand opening at her nail salon. Now, on the surface, this seemed like a tragedy, but after you did some more digging into the case, I discovered this song.
Bad bitches bout to bust it wide up. We use a pick me ass bitch and we the ones that got some motion in this brand new car. Finna whip it like a stolen. I been smoking on my ex and it's the pack that got me choking. Long as a bitch got legs, I stand on everything I said. I be smoking on my ex bitch, that relationship was dead. I don't never feel the shade, but I see bitches got a shit. I ain't worried about my ex, I put that pussy on his head.
You see, this song is apparently about how Tan the God unalived her ex. Now, supposedly, by her account, her ex was putting hands on her in a life-threatening way, so I am in no way about to be a living tribunal here. But she should make a song about smoking on her ex-pack, label her EP that, then make a short film about it. You shouldn't be surprised by what happens afterwards. 8 months later, she was a targeted hit. Look, I am not here to claim who's right and who's wrong. No one gonna speak ill on the dead, unless you're the queen. You can't use an Estes flask to come back to life on that one. But if you talk ill on the dead, you'll be buried by the shovel. Like, just saying. Because the collective philosophy of what hip-hop is / should be has now become tarnished, it's now as a concept instead of or is it? Is this the natural evolution of it? Which, not to get philosophical, would this still be considered destruction if it has transformed itself into this new state? Socially, yes. Let's look at the subject matter of someone like Future, for example, and his overall lifestyle. He is a 40-year-old man from Georgia who has 8 children from 8 different mothers and an adopted son. He was engaged with Sierra back in 2013, but they would shortly separate due to his infidelity, along with suing him for failing to pay child support. Another one of his baby moms sued him in 2016 as she accused him of lying about his income to reduce the amount of child support he had to pay, with the claim being that he had an income of $16,000 per month, while Smith accused him that it was over $50,000 per month. Among the expenses required from this would be therapy for the child for having to deal with the experience of having a neglecting father. A neglecting father who is not only one of the biggest rappers in the world, but often raps about infidelity in a way which is inspiring for a lot of men, for some reason. Now, stay with me here, as it may sound like I'm pulling at strings and using a brush to paint a picture in the air, but just stay with me. Black on black relationships were prohibited during slavery and would result in punitive action. Hence traditions such as jumping the broom, something that is believed to have been started back in 19th century Britain as a way to covertly announce partnership amongst black couples. This, joined with the couples being separated by forced, pre-existing or established relationships, ingrained a deep psychological scar which, even after emancipation, prevented black couples from unionizing and reuniting. Fast forward to the 1900s, the legislation of the man in the house policy would, in layman terms, set a law under which moral basis would make those deserving of welfare assistance. If an able-bodied man was deemed fit to provide, then they would not be permitted for welfare. This, in turn, would lead to a disregard towards men who could not provide financially for their spouses. Despite this policy being redacted in 1968, it would remain another long-lasting mental effect on the outlook of men who could and could not provide. So, what the fuck does any of this gotta do with listen to Future? My take is that this long form of conditioning from economic policies and the after effects of slavery is reinforced by the materialistic goals and individualism and the aversion of commitment. I'm not saying Future is saying, don't laugh a bitch cause slavery said so, don't laugh a bitch cause slavery said so. But when he says shit like, if you catch me cheating I ain't never saying sorry, then it doesn't necessarily incentivize men to be faithful or women to want to date such men who would bump his music so religiously, given its strong themes of infidelity. When you then couple that with the inordinate fanbase Future has, where he's from, and Southern culture in general, Atlanta, and the black marital rates that are showing a constant decline of both black men and women who are married versus those who aren't married, and those who are not in wedlock relationships, the culture that he pushes is a pretty anti-productive one in the field of establishing strong relationships within the black community. And that's just with one person contributing to one aspect of it. You have other artists of similar or lesser known appeal that also establish this societal image of what hip-hop culture has been transforming into. This isn't to say that this type of music wasn't here from the early days of rap, as we know groups like NWA were very controversial in subject matter, or even someone like Big L, who would never shy away from the more idealistic and flamboyant depictions of gangster rap. In his words, if my girl think I'm lower, then the bitch is a fool. To engage in this very sport that is a threat to relationships and honestly treats women as if they're forms of capital, you can't all be surprised when the dysfunction hits the streets and then look elsewhere to blame. Once again, to tie hypocrisy into this, Chris Brown, who has made an entire career of predominantly crying and singing about women, would weaponize that promiscuous lifestyle against Quavo, claiming that he slept with his girl whilst Quavo and Swati were together. Speaking of that feud, that felt like it came out of nowhere. When I actually researched as to why they were beefing to begin with, it was because, drumroll please, Quavo got with Karrueche, which was Chris Brown's ex. So it was over a woman that doesn't owe her body or life to anybody, but evidently, because Chris Brown invited the Migos into his home and treated them with respect, this was seen as an act of treason. It's another case of using women as a punchline, which is honestly distasteful, and I'm talking about in the realms of one's sexual relationship with them. The image provided by men is that of a very materialistic one, which denounces the connection we have to both the immaterial and the desire to acquire wealth outside of things that cannot be monetized. And then the value of a person is to be measured by what they can buy and afford. We know the lavish rap lifestyle is very alluring and sonically pleasing to hear, but it is one which isolates a vast majority of its listeners to idolize a lifestyle that isn't really the way you want to think about it. I talked about this in my video Eradication of Influences, as how a lot of the products you will see influencers promoting, they don't actually own, but will have on a loan, and then they gotta give it back. Especially in the case of music, these artists are often stuck in these money-leeching ideals to where the money in which they flaunt will soon be gone in a few years. But hey, don't take my word for it. Just listen to financial and investment guru Fetty Wap when he talks about the very smart investments he made.
Paying so much fucking bills, you don't know exactly what your name is on, what you owe.
I was doing like $150,000 a month in bills, but I was that's the dumbest shit I was doing. Like, matter of fact, if I had to, it was jewelry and like apartments. I had a lot of fucking apartments.
You had like 5 like apartments or something like that?
Yeah, I have like maybe like 4 apartments in Jersey. I had like 2 apartments in Miami, a couple apartments in LA. Then I have a house out in LA, I have a house in Jersey, like a house in Miami. Like, I was just doing.
Yo, this sounds. All right, so wait.
When I started looking at my bills, like when I started paying my shit myself, like I'm like, what the fuck? I'm paying $10,000 a month for car insurance. Like, I'm like, well, I'm doing that for I'm only driving about 2-3 of these motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I learned, you can keep your cars, just take the insurance off if you're not gonna drive it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like, he is one of many artists whose lifestyle got ahead of him. And the company that you keep around are the extensions of the profit you make and not the product of your soul. Even if you sell your soul, they will stay as long as the soul you sold can pay for their lifestyles. Here we can see the desecration of communities that are transferable through transactional means. This is why you see rappers always saying that they roll with the people from their day one squad, often friends before the money came in and started to become life-changing. And even so, that's no guarantee that they would be immune to new changes. The destruction that we see within the community is going to be irrevocably linked to the greedy corporate agendas, the conglomerates who push this very music out. UMG, Warner Group, and Sony, and all those other groups under them are fully aware about the consequences of the events, such as the Travis Scott concert in 2021, or about the reception women like Sexy Red and Glorilla will acquire. The material lifestyle a vast majority of current rappers within the past 15 years or so spit. The intervention will only raise concern if the revenue from these artists start to drop, of which case, they'll just replace them with someone else. Which is why, at the end of the day, this is largely and almost entirely about take you out. It's done in a very nuanced and structured way. Hell, even in ways which escape the understanding of the very agents that work for the record labels. They have control over their artists the second they sign their name on the dotted line. The liberties they believe they have is only as real as the money they can provide, and even then, that's a very flimsy tether attached to multiple different people. No matter what someone like Vince Staples says, since he's now become an independent artist and does not have the same type of platform someone like 21 Savage has, his wisdom will often fall under the radar and the rug compared to the concert noises of a Travis Scott. In truth, I look at Vince Staples as the black sheep of hip-hop, which is unfortunately ironic because the mentality he has should be the status quo and not the outlier. As to even when asked about the Kendrick and Drake beef, he honestly dismissed it and stated it to be an obvious ploy as to how it was a perfect means to redirect attention from business mergings and dealings that would worsen not only us as a whole, but further limit the profit and capital gain black people would get from their music from third parties such as TikTok, as to when UMG did not renegotiate their deal earlier this year, something they would later revert. This isn't to say Vince is the only person to be so outspoken about the unjust practices in the music industry, but he is one of the few to do so with so much consistency without compromising himself or his moral code. Also, since hip-hop is an American-led genre in music, and seeing how America serves to be the entertainment capital of the world, with its headquarters being in LA, that slope eventually leads to the illusionary goals being made in the form of streaming numbers, records sold, and essentially awards that can be measured in units and not the significance of a true cultural steps being made. I suppose, if there's anything to say about all of this, is that this medium is something to where two things can be true at once. Hip-hop can create just as much as it can destroy. It can inspire just as much as it can cause division. It can give just as much as it can take. The problem comes with the lack of urgency to stop many of the corporate practices so that the future generations will not have the perception that the only way to make music that can both mean something and put food on the table is through means of selling out your content. For your favorite artist has done the same degree. Their affiliations with someone is an affiliation with someone else, who's an affiliation with someone else, who is someone else, who is someone else, who probably touched an 11-year-old child at some point in their life. Are we to condemn every person in that timeline? Is that judgment hereditary? Unless you're an affiliate of Diddy, it usually isn't. However, that should not be the basis to which we turn a blind eye to what is happening out there right in front of us. I said this is not something you can put a price tag on. But steps are continuously being made so that the price tag comes in the form of very tiny writing that you cannot see until all your pockets are empty. A level of awareness is needed to make sure that the very nature of this is not completely engulfed in the clutches of corporate greed, and that our own bickering and that breeds more hypocrisy needs to cease if we are to ever hear the voices of rationale and progression again. Because despite it all, despite the bad, the evil, the corrupt, the greedy, and the villainous associations and intentions that plague every sector of this art form, you just cannot get enough of it. You cannot get enough of the diverse sounds, the complex rhyme schemes, the meaningful stories, the waves of energies that course throughout your body, the amazing and magical moments it creates, that bridges, it gaps, the people it unifies, the lives it creates, the lives it saves, the society it builds, the ambition it realizes. It literally is a force that is less dependent on those that try to harness the complete utter control over it. Because the truth of the matter is, without this art form, without this amazing talent that it generates from those that you love and hate, hip-hop will forever remain the one thing that transcends all things that can reach all places. As long as we remember that, and as long as we ensure that the core essence of that spirit, that blood, is not abandoned, they will never be able to truly take this away from us. And in my eyes, that is the true soul of hip-hop.
Peace.